The applause still echoed through the auditorium as I stepped off the stage, my palms still tingling from the adrenaline. The prototype had performed perfectly. Months of testing, revisions, and sleepless nights had all come down to this 20-minute demo. A small nod from one of the generals in the front row told me everything I needed to know. We had nailed it. I should have left then. My part was done. These symposiums were always more about politics than progress after the presentations. Normally, I would have slipped out the side exit back to the quiet of my hotel room. But just as I reached the doorway, I saw her. Lydia. She was standing near the refreshments table, her head tilted back in laughter. Carter stood next to her, all smooth confidence in a tailored suit, holding a glass of something expensive. The two of them looked like they belonged in a perfume ad. I froze. That laugh, Lydia's laugh, was the same one she used to aim at me after late-night coding sessions when our shared frustration turned into something warm and familiar. That little half-smirk she gave Carter? She used to flash that at me too, usually right after one of my dumb puns about aerodynamics. Now it felt like a ghost version of the past, recognizable but not mine anymore. Carter said something else and the crowd around them burst out laughing. Lydia leaned her shoulder into him the way she used to lean into me when we won grants together. I felt a bitter knot tighten in my chest. I turned to leave. I really did. But then I heard him. Carter's voice was louder now, deliberately carrying. You know, Nathaniel's work is very legacy. Like seeing a cassette tape in a museum. Nice, nostalgic, but who actually uses it anymore? There was a ripple of laughter, too forced, too eager. Lydia didn't laugh. Not exactly. But she didn't say anything either. Just sipped her drink with a faint smirk and looked away. I stepped back into the room, my jaw tight. Funny, I said loud enough to interrupt, that a cassette tape just beat your drone record by 27 seconds. That got a few heads to turn. Carter grinned at me like he'd baited exactly the response he wanted. Then let's see what happens when the tape has to program in real time, he said. On the fly. None of that pre-scripted demo stuff. A few engineers in the crowd perked up. Someone whistled. I saw Lydia glance at me, eyes neutral but assessing. Then she did it, tilted her head with that same mocking curiosity she used to reserve for my earliest prototypes. That sounds fair, she said, lifting her glass. Let's make it interesting. I blinked. You're serious? She shrugged. Unless you're scared. A laugh rolled through the group. One of the interns pulled out his phone to record. Another guy clapped Carter on the back like this was a prize fight. I'm not scared, I said flatly. But if this is your idea of productive collaboration. It's a symposium, Carter cut in. Let's showcase some real innovation. 2 drones. 1 prompt. 20 minutes. Code and fly. Lydia raised an eyebrow. Deal? I looked at her. Her eyes were cool, unreadable. Once, those eyes scanned every debug line beside mine. Now they were just waiting to see if I'd flinch. Deal, I said. More cheers. People began clearing space near the back of the exhibition hall where the floor was marked for flight tests. Carter already had his laptop out. Lydia was smiling again, not at me, but at the spectacle she helped stir up. My hands were already moving to unpack my gear. This wasn't about winning. This was about refusing to be dismissed. Not by a smooth-talking liaison. And definitely not by the woman who once told me I was the future of flight engineering. And yet, as the crowd gathered and the first lines of code scrolled across my screen, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had already lost something. Something far more personal than a public challenge. The cleared-out corner of the exhibition hall wasn't built for drama, but it held it anyway. Spectators lined the edges, defense contractors in suits, engineers with badges, interns practically bouncing on their heels with excitement. Someone had already connected a projector to both our laptops so the crowd could follow our code in real time. I didn't look at Carter. I didn't need to. I knew the type. Too charming, too confident. A man used to skipping steps and still getting applause. The challenge was simple. Program a drone from scratch, no preloaded scripts, to navigate an obstacle course using just visual sensors and a time limit of 3 minutes. 20 minutes to code, no external libraries, no second chances. My hands moved on instinct. Years of writing flight algorithms, optimizing decision trees, cutting unnecessary lines, this was the part one could do in my sleep. I didn't stop to admire my own work. I just built. Carter was typing fast, flashing his code to the crowd like it was a magic trick. Lots of flair. Too much flair. You've got a crowd, someone whispered to him. He grinned without looking up. Lydia stood with her arms crossed, sipping her drink, eyes flitting between us. If she was rooting for anyone, her face didn't show it. Time, someone called out. I saved my code, loaded the program to my drone, and stepped back. My fingers were steady, but my heart wasn't. Carter's drone lifted first, smooth takeoff, clean arc, decent acceleration. But then it hesitated at the second turn. It paused for half a second too long. The crowd shifted. Looks like someone overfitted the curve detection, I muttered under my breath. Then the drone clipped the corner of a floating pillar. Not a full crash, but enough to spin it off course. Carter cursed softly. The drone tried to recover jerky movements, lost orientation before finally dropping to the floor like a metal bird with a broken wing. Guess cassette tapes still work, someone murmured behind me. I launched mine. My drone rose with quiet confidence, traced the path I had coded with graceful arcs, and slid through each gate like it had done this 100 times. It looped back to its starting point with 2 seconds to spare and hovered midair, completely still. Applause. A few cheers. Even a couple of engineers in the back nodded with quiet respect. I didn't look at Carter. I didn't have to. I looked at Lydia. She was already walking toward me, heels clicking against the concrete floor. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, there would be a flicker of the old her. A hint of pride. A soft smile, the way she used to look at me when we pulled off something near impossible. Instead, she tilted her head and said, loud enough for everyone around to hear. Well, I guess even a clock stuck in the past tells the right time twice a day. A few people laughed. It wasn't cruel, just uncomfortable. I let the smile fade from my face. Thanks, I said quietly. That means a lot coming from you. She didn't flinch. Just turned and walked away, back to Carter, who was still inspecting the pieces of his drone with a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. The crowd began to disperse. Some people gave me pats on the back. Others threw out polite congratulations. But the moment was already over. I packed my gear slowly. Deliberately. My head was buzzing, not from the victory, but from the silence that followed it. The hollow kind. Lydia hadn't just applauded my opponent. She had helped build the stage he stood on. And when the curtain fell, she made sure my applause didn't sound like a win at all. I walked out of the symposium alone, into the night, gripping the drone case like it was the only thing I could still trust. The rain started about halfway through the cab ride back to the hotel. Not a storm, just a slow, steady drizzle that made everything outside the window look blurred and tired. Kind of like how I felt. The driver didn't talk. He must have sensed I wasn't in the mood. I just watched the droplets streak across the glass as the city rolled by, lights smeared like watercolors. It was a short ride, but I felt every bump. Back in the room, I tossed my bag onto the chair and sank onto the edge of the bed. The buzz from the overhead light felt louder than it should have. The whole room was too quiet, too clean, too far from the noise I actually wanted to drown out. I kicked off my shoes and sat there, still in my symposium badge and button-up shirt, staring at the floor. The wind should have felt good. It didn't. All I could hear was Lydia's voice, cool and cutting. Even a clock stuck in the past tells the right time twice a day. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, and rubbed my face with both hands. She didn't just turn on me. She made a show of it. A public rebranding of what we used to be. And the worst part? She didn't seem to feel a damn thing about it. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Weekly budget sync, shared workspace expenses, Nathaniel and Lydia. I swiped it away, then hesitated. We hadn't removed each other from the shared startup accounts. Not even the internal tools we used back when we ran everything lean. Google Workspace, shared Slack, one synced expense tracker that I usually forgot to check unless something broke. I opened the expense log, half out of habit, half because I didn't want to sit there doing nothing. The numbers looked normal until they didn't. There it was under Professional Shared Resources. Innovation Tower, Private Suite, 3 days. Cost, $1,800. Date range, last week. Submitted by Lydia K. I blinked. Why the hell would she book a private suite through her joint workspace account? We weren't actively working together on anything now. Not officially. And that building, that was where they housed pitch decks, VC meetings, private demos. I scrolled further down the log. The suite booking was followed by 2 coffee shop charges in the same area. Then a rideshare expense flagged as client meeting, also tagged under shared funds. Client? I stood up, pacing now, the nervous energy finally surfacing. I clicked over to our shared project calendar. We hadn't used it in weeks, but Lydia had always been meticulous. It still ran in the background. There, on the same 3 days as the suite rental, she had an event blocked out. Innovation Suite Work Session, confidential. All day. Private event. No guests listed. But the note included a document, prototype alignment with DTC requirements, final draft. DTC. Defense Tech Commission. Government contracts. The same agency Carter worked under. I sat down hard. She wasn't just working with him. She was using our shared startup shell, our old infrastructure, to funnel something. Meetings, money, maybe even IP. And I had been too distracted to see it. My first instinct was denial. Lydia wouldn't do that. She had built everything with me. She had stood beside me through budget cuts, hardware malfunctions, investor ghostings. She had fought for our name in rooms where I couldn't even get a chair. But the signs were there. Had been for a while. She'd been distant for months. Always vague in emails, always too busy to hop on a call. And tonight? Tonight she chose Carter. I looked again at the expense report. Our name was still listed as a contributor. She was using what we built together to power something she hadn't invited me into. Something she was hiding. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall. I wasn't even angry yet. Not really. I just felt cold. Betrayal doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with receipts. Line items. Shared calendars. Silent updates you were never meant to read. But now I had. And whatever this was, whatever they were building together in that private suite, I was going to find out. I got up and opened my old admin dashboard. If Lydia hadn't changed the permissions, if she was still lazy with her cloud habits like she always had been. There it was. Access logs. Device syncs. App authorizations. I stared at the screen and made a decision I hadn't made in years. I wasn't going to cry about this. I was going to investigate. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I didn't try, I did. I lay on the bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the air conditioner buzzing like a question I couldn't shut off. What was she doing in that suite? Why use our budget? Why hide it? By morning, the rain had stopped, but the clouds hadn't moved. The whole city looked washed out, as if it were waiting for something to happen. I took one last sip of lukewarm hotel coffee, then popped the trunk of my rental and grabbed the old field kit I kept out of habit. A compact drone, a high-zoom lens, my tablet. Stuff I hadn't needed in years but never really let go of. Back when Lydia and I built our first autonomous flight model, we had admin rights to everything. Shared hardware, synced logins, emergency override codes. She had cleaned most of it out when the team split, but not all of it. Some parts she either forgot or didn't think I'd notice. Like the endpoint manager she'd set up to sync her tablet with our original debugging platform. Still connected. Still feeding location data. At 8:14 a.m. her tablet pinged at the Innovation Tower. Suite level 4. Right where the charges had come from. By 8:46 I was parked across the street, 2 blocks down, wedged between a service van and a bakery that hadn't opened yet. I sat behind the wheel with my drone ready in the back seat and my tablet glowing beside me, showing the internal suite schedule Lydia had manually uploaded last night. 9 a.m. executive walkthrough secured. Attendees, private. Duration, 2 hours. Perfect. I didn't need 2 hours. At 9:07 I saw them. Carter's ridiculous silver Audi pulled up first, sleek and loud like everything about him. He stepped out in a gray coat and sunglasses, holding a coffee like a prop. Then he looked around the lot like he was expecting someone. Or hiding from someone. Lydia arrived 2 minutes later. A rideshare this time. She stepped out wearing a navy blazer and a pulled-back bun, the kind of professional armor she only wore for people she wanted to impress. She didn't even glance at her phone as she approached him. No hesitation. No tension. He smiled. She smiled back. And then she touched his arm. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to remember exactly when she used to do that to me on the way into boardrooms, when she was nervous, when she wanted quiet reassurance. It wasn't a nervous gesture now. It was familiarity. I hit record. The drone camera mounted discreetly behind the rear window captured everything in a wide shot. Lydia pulling out a badge. Carter entering the building ahead of her. Their bodies close, their posture relaxed. Like a team. Inside the car, my hand tightened around the steering wheel. I wasn't shaking. I was done shaking. They disappeared into the elevator and I stopped the recording. I had what I needed. No sound. No direct proof of collusion. But the pattern was forming and I'd seen enough to know this wasn't just professional overlap. She wasn't consulting. She was partnering. Behind my back. With someone who made a show of humiliating me less than 24 hours ago. I closed the tablet. The drone slid back into its case with a satisfying click. My fingers moved slower now, not from nerves, but from something heavier. Something final. This wasn't hurt anymore. It was clarity. She was gone. Not just personally. Not just emotionally. Strategically. She had crossed over, burned the old bridge, and was building something new with him. And now I had the footage to prove it. As I pulled out of the parking spot, my reflection in the rearview mirror didn't flinch. I looked the same as I had yesterday. But everything had changed. I spent the rest of that day planning. Not pacing, not ranting, just planning. Quiet, deliberate, like tuning a machine before launch. I knew if I waited too long, doubt would crawl in. I'd start convincing myself to be reasonable. To let it go. But no. This time, there would be no more silence. No more swallowing betrayal like it was part of doing business. That evening, I shaved, changed into a plain gray hoodie and jeans, and pulled a cap low over my eyes. Not for disguise. Just enough to make me forget I used to dress up for meetings with Lydia. That I used to care what she thought when I walked into a room. At 7:15 p.m., I walked into the Innovation Tower posing as a courier. A friend from my university days worked security consulting. He gave me a basic dispatch badge, and I carried a small locked hard case that looked official enough. The front desk waved me through. Elevators opened with a beep, and by 7:19, I was standing outside Suite 414. Their voices were muffled but clear through the door. Laughter, then footsteps. Then Carter's voice, slick and amused, like he owned the air he breathed. I knocked once short, firm. The door opened seconds later. Lydia stood there, caught mid-sentence. When she saw me, the words died on her tongue. Her smile froze, not quite confusion, not quite panic. Nathaniel? Her voice was tight. Defensive. Carter appeared over her shoulder, brows lifting like this was some kind of surprise party. Wow, he said, adjusting his cuffs. Didn't know you were into dramatic entrances. I didn't say a word. Just stepped past Lydia without waiting for permission. She didn't stop me. She was too stunned to. The room was as I expected, minimalist, expensive, and impersonal. A whiteboard with equations. An open laptop showing a schematic I instantly recognized because I had written its first version 6 months ago. I set the hard case on the table, flipped the latch, and pulled out a small portable screen. Then I turned it toward them. The drone footage played in silence. Lydia and Carter. Entering the building. Smiling. The way she touched his arm. The door shutting behind them. Lydia took one step back. Carter let out a low whistle. You followed us? I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on her. You used our shared workspace funds, I said flatly. You booked a suite under both our names. You ran a private meeting with someone who publicly undermined me, and you didn't say a word. Lydia swallowed. Her voice was strained but controlled. I was going to tell you. No, you weren't. I reached into my pocket and took out the printed copy of the expense report. I placed it on the table next to the screen. One line was highlighted in yellow, prototype alignment with DTC requirements. That's our work, Lydia. You didn't change the name. You didn't even remove the shared credentials. That draft still bears our company watermark. Carter scoffed and stepped forward like he was stepping into a boardroom pitch. All right, Nathaniel, this is clearly emotional for you. But let's not confuse innovation with ownership. Lydia's moved on. So have I. This, he gestured around the room, is just business. I looked at him for the first time. Really looked at him. He was used to this, minimizing people until they stopped resisting. Then consider this a business decision. I reached down and turned off the screen. You'll be hearing from legal. That got his smile to falter. Lydia took a shaky breath. Nathaniel, you don't need to do this. You're right, I said, stepping back toward the door. I don't need to. I want to. Her eyes dropped. For the first time since I'd walked in, she looked unsure. She wasn't used to seeing me like this, quiet, resolved, and already gone. I turned, opened the door, and paused with one hand on the frame. Next time you use someone's legacy to launch your future, I said without turning around, make sure they're not still watching. Then I walked out. No slam. No grand exit. Just silence. The kind that says, you've burned your bridge. And I'm not building another. Back at the hotel, I didn't take my shoes off. I didn't sit down. I walked straight to the desk, powered up my laptop, and plugged in the drive with the footage. I didn't hesitate, didn't double-check my decision. That part of me, the part that used to second-guess everything, had died somewhere between Lydia's silence and Carter's smug little lecture. This wasn't revenge. This was cleanup. I started by pulling up our old startup accelerator portal. We had been part of the AeroSeed program 3 years ago. Mentorship, early-stage funding, some shared infrastructure. Technically, Lydia and I were still listed as co-founders in their system. The portal had a form for reporting ethical violations, though I'd never dreamed I'd be the one filling it out. Subject: unauthorized use of joint IP, workspace funds, and prototype documentation. Names involved: Lydia K. Co-founder, Carter J. External liaison, DTC contractor. Supporting files attached. Surveillance footage, 4 minutes. .mp4. Expense reports, PDF. A calendar logs, screenshot. A shared document metadata. Exported. I didn't embellish. I didn't add commentary. Just facts. After I clicked submit, there was a pause, like the site itself was holding its breath. Then a green checkmark flashed across the screen. Your report has been received. You will be contacted within 2 to 3 business days. I closed the tab and opened my email. Next was the formal message to Aeroseed's legal team. Then one to the investors who had supported our joint work back in the early phase. I kept the language calm, professional, just like I used to write in grant applications. Dear Ms. Lewis, please find attached materials indicating a breach of our ethical and contractual agreements regarding prototype development and IP usage. The footage and documentation clearly demonstrate an undisclosed collaboration between Ms. Lydia K. and Mr. Carter J., utilizing jointly owned IP for private engagement without consent or disclosure. Per our initial funding agreements, I am notifying all relevant stakeholders. I am willing to cooperate fully in any formal review or legal action. Regards, Nathaniel Reeves. I reread it once, then hit send. The files uploaded without issue. The inbox went quiet again. Lydia hadn't messaged me since the confrontation. No apology, no defense, just the same cold silence that had become her new language. But that changed about an hour later. 10:21 p.m. Lydia K. Can we please talk? I didn't mean for it to happen like this. 10:26 p.m. Lydia K. Nathaniel, seriously, just tell me what you're doing, please. 10:33 p.m. Lydia K. This isn't you. You're not like this. 10:34 p.m. Lydia K. I didn't betray you. It's complicated. Carter isn't even. I didn't open the rest. Didn't need to. She was unraveling. I muted the conversation and turned off notifications. Then I opened a fresh page and began documenting every file I'd submitted. Chain of evidence. Timestamps. Backup exports to the encrypted drive. There was something mechanical about it, calm, methodical, steady. I had always thought that when this kind of moment came, if it ever did, it would feel like an explosion, like something loud, final. But it didn't. It felt like waking up in the middle of a surgery, heart exposed, and realizing you're the one holding the scalpel. When I finally stood and looked around the hotel room, it felt like a different place. A waiting room, a bridge between the person I was and whoever I'd just become. Outside, the city lights blurred again behind the window glass. Lydia's last unread message sat on the screen. 10:49 p.m. Lydia K. Please, just tell me what you've done. I stared at it for a long second. Then I shut the laptop and went to sleep. She showed up 2 days later. I knew she would. That's how Lydia operated. She wouldn't reply to a hard truth. She'd wait until she could control the room, twist the story, walk back into your life like nothing ever cracked. She didn't believe in consequences, just delays. I was working out of the temporary office suite the startup accelerator provided, a neutral space where my access badge still carried weight. I'd been there since morning, filing technical documentation and redacting joint material from our old cloud drives. My phone was on silent. I was halfway through a report when I heard the knock. I didn't look up at first. I just said, "Come in." Then she walked through the door, hair tied back, no makeup, no blazer, just jeans, a dark sweater, and eyes red-rimmed like she hadn't slept. She looked smaller than usual, like the power had drained out of her. "Can we talk?" she said, standing near the door. I closed my laptop calmly. "We're already talking." She hesitated, then walked to the opposite chair and sat, hands folded in her lap. She didn't look angry. Not yet, just careful. "I read your filing," she said, "or at least the version that got passed around." I leaned back. "Then you know it wasn't personal." "Bullshit," she snapped. "You could have called me. You could have asked why. But instead you went straight to scorched earth." Her voice was louder now, that old confidence creeping back in. "You always do this," she continued. You shut down, you twist everything into betrayal the second someone doesn't follow your exact plan. I didn't respond. She shifted forward, elbows on her knees. Carter was a connection. That's it. He has access and I used it. The suite? That was strategy, not secrecy. You think I was trying to steal something from you? You didn't try, I said calmly. You did. Her jaw clenched. This is insane. We had nothing formalized. No signed exclusivity. No IP lockout. Everything was still in the gray zone. I tilted my head. So you admit it. She exhaled sharply and looked away. You've always taken everything so personally. Every move, every decision, it's always life or death with you. You used our platform, our research, I said, still steady, and you used me as the silent partner while building a side project with someone who mocked me publicly. You didn't even think to tell me. You just assumed I'd stay in the background, same as always. She was quiet for a second. Then she smiled, but it wasn't kind. You know what, Nathaniel? Maybe I didn't tell you because I knew you couldn't handle it. You get this tunnel vision. You live inside your little world of code and loyalty, and the second someone operates outside that script, you freak out. You're not the first person to say that, I said. But you are the last one who'll get to use it as an excuse. She stood abruptly. I didn't betray you. I adapted. That's what leaders do. Leaders tell the truth, I replied. She stared at me for a long time like she was still trying to find the angle, the weak spot. I made you, she said finally, voice cold. Without me, no one would have ever heard of you. I nodded slowly. And now they will. Just not the way you hoped. Her mouth opened, but I didn't give her the chance. I stood, crossed the room, and opened the door. You can collect your things from the shared workspace by Friday, I said quietly. After that, you'll be locked out. You can't just push me out, she said, stunned now. I still have equity. And an ethics investigation, I replied. Let's see which one moves faster. She didn't move. Her lips parted like she had one more line, one more twist, but nothing came. I didn't gloat. I didn't slam the door. I just waited. Finally, she walked out, brushing past me like a ghost. I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. I wasn't angry anymore. Not even disappointed. I was free. Lydia left the shared workspace on a Thursday. No goodbye. No messages. Just an empty desk, her login credentials scrubbed from the system, and a silence that settled over everything like dust. I knew she wouldn't go quietly. Lydia never disappeared. She repositioned, reframed, rewrote. But for the first time, she didn't have control of the narrative. That night, I returned to the hotel and poured myself a drink, not to celebrate. Just to mark the moment. 5 years of building, pitching, presenting, and now it was gone. Not the work, just the illusion that I'd ever truly shared it. The next morning, Carter reached out. His message came through my professional inbox. Short, diplomatic. Nathaniel, I hope we can keep this situation from escalating further. I believe we're all aligned in wanting the best outcomes for the tech and the people behind it. If there's a way to have a conversation offline, I'm open to it. See, Jackson? No apology. No admission. Just that slick attempt to reframe everything as a misunderstanding. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to discuss. Instead, I forwarded the drone footage and expense documentation to 2 more places, the Defense Tech Commission's Ethics Board and the VC firm funding Lydia's next prototype venture. No explanation. Just the files. I let the material speak for itself. That afternoon, I packed my bags and checked out of the hotel. No one saw me leave. By the time the elevator doors closed behind me, I had already received the first automated confirmation. Your submission has been received. A formal inquiry has been opened. Later that night, as I was driving back toward the city, no music, no GPS voice, I pulled over at a gas station on the edge of town. Just to stretch my legs. Just to breathe. I stood there under the flickering lights, holding a cup of bad coffee, and realized something strange. I didn't feel anything. No relief. No bitterness. No gloating. Just a quiet calm. She had left. He had retreated. And the wheels were already turning. There was nothing else I needed to do. By the end of the week, I received an encrypted message from the Accelerator's internal counsel. Thank you for your cooperation. We have suspended Lydia K's access to all technical documentation pending review. Further updates will follow. That was it. No drama. No confrontation. Just consequences, cold and procedural. The kind that stick. I deleted Carter's message. Blocked his contact. Then I got back in the car. And drove on. By Monday, the emails started rolling in. The first came from the Defense Tech Commission. A brief, bureaucratic notice that Carter Jackson was now under formal review for potential ethical violations and that all DTC-funded prototypes involving external collaborators were being paused indefinitely. Next came the investors. One of them, a partner I'd only met twice, forwarded my footage with a short note. "Appreciate the clarity, Nathaniel. We'll be revisiting our relationship with Lydia immediately." And just like that, the silence Lydia had once used as a weapon now folded in on her. She didn't message me again. No calls. No late-night explanations. No dramatic apology at the 11th hour. Carter disappeared just as quietly, no LinkedIn updates, no press mentions, no scheduled speaking gigs. They had tried to bury the truth behind charm and connections, and now they were the ones buried under scrutiny. I didn't watch it unfold. I didn't refresh the news or search for their names. I already knew how it would go. In this industry, the story isn't what happens, it's who owns the evidence when it does. Instead, I went back to the workshop, the one I'd left behind months ago. Bare tables, a few prototype skeletons, and the humming desktop server I'd built by hand 3 years ago. I wiped the whiteboard clean. Started over. No blueprints. No legacy code. Just blank space. I didn't try to resurrect the old project. That was gone. Lydia had taken it the moment she turned it into leverage. But I still had the core idea, the one no one else had ever believed in until she did. This time it was just mine. No shared logins. No co-signatures. No compromise. I spent the next week sketching out a stripped-down version of the design. Something smaller. Leaner. Meant to be tested in silence. Meant to fly without permission. At night, I didn't dream of symposiums or applause. I didn't imagine Carter's downfall or Lydia's regret. I didn't imagine anything at all. I just slept. And in the mornings I worked. Emails continued to come in. Some congratulated me quietly. Others hinted at possible partnerships now that the air was clear. I thanked them and moved on. I wasn't chasing opportunity anymore. I was chasing peace. On Friday, I reactivated an old domain, one we'd let expire when we pivoted the company years ago. I stripped it down to a single page. No logo. No pitch deck. Just a sentence. We're starting over. This time, we're flying solo. No signatures. No team bios. Just me. I sat back, looked at the screen, and smiled. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about being right. It was about building something honest. Something that didn't need applause to exist. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to believe in it. Or me. I believed in it enough to begin again.